Derby County are one of three clubs chasing after the signature of versatile 22-year-old defender Michael Craig. Now, he is currently obviously contracted at Reading until the 30th of June in 2025, and that is what has opened the door for a range of clubs to be interested in this defender. Now, Portsmouth, Derby County and Birmingham City are all reportedly preparing summer moves for the fullback of and this comes from lowest tier. Now, he's had an impressive season, apparently, according to Reading. Now, I'm not going to say that I know a lot about him. I'm not going to tell you that I've watched him a million times. But if we go back to last season, I believe he was contracted to Spurs, and they did eventually agree to release him from his contract, which ultimately then played a part in him joining Reading last season. And he's been a very good player according to lowest tier, and obviously was one of their better players until he picked up an injury which sidelined him for the rest of the season. Now, he came through at Tottenham, he spent time at Southampton and obviously more recently at Reading, but he's been a very, very versatile player and someone who could certainly play more roles than he has done so far, and that is the important thing for Derby County when they're looking at a player like Michael Craig. At just 22 years old, he's got a long career ahead of him, and he's got a lot of growth to deliver until he gets to the point where he's sort of not going to get anywhere else. And you look at sort of his season this year, he's played 30 out of 45 possible games, 64% of that is in the starting 11, he's played 63% of the minutes, scoring 2 goals, collecting 0 assists. Now, there isn't believed to be a contract extension clause where he could potentially extend his contract at Reading, but there is set to be a situation where at the moment, obviously, Reading's situation is that they aren't able to enter contract negotiations with him, which ultimately puts it in a really, really difficult spot. Now, at the moment, he's valued at around €500,000 according to Transfer Market, and he has made appearances for Scotland's youth team under 16s, 17s, 19s and under 21s, where he made his debut just a few months ago. Now, obviously, for Michael Craig heading into this summer, obviously his aim will be, it'll either be to stay at Reading and get consistent football, or it'll be get the best possible move for him. Now, I'm not going to turn around and say that Derby County is the greatest move for him, and that's with no disrespect for him. It's with no disrespect for the Derby County staff if they are potentially looking at him, because he could go on to be an unbelievable player. But he can play in defensive midfield, he can play at right back, he's played 39 times in DM, 31 times on the right hand side. He can also play as a central midfielder or in that sort of right wing back, right midfield position. And there is a possibility that he could come into Derby and be brilliant. But if he's coming in as a right back, he's not going to get in ahead of Kane Wilson. He's not going to get in ahead of Ryan Nyambe. So the big question would be, are we moving Ryan Nyambe? Are we going to move Ryan Nyambe on? Are we going to move Kane Wilson into more of a wing back position? They're going to be sort of the big questions that's going to sort of be centred around this deal heading into the summer if it is to go ahead. Now, obviously, we know that currently he's sidelined with an injury, and that's sort of a big problem for Derby, because we've had a lot of problems with injuries over the course of the last few years, especially with the likes of Kane Wilson, with the likes of Ryan Nyambe. So if he is coming in as that right back, you want him to be sort of one of those players who's going to be able to stay fit. Now, he has played a lot of football for obviously Reading this season, obviously 30 appearances, but I think he's made 76 for them in total over the course of his time there. And I do believe that obviously, if Derby County bring him in, there's obviously a reason why they've brought him in, but I can't see him being sort of a starting player at Derby County. And I think what the important thing is for Derby is that they take a look at every single option and not just pick up the first option because they're free transfers or anything like that. And that's sort of where I think we find ourselves right now, is you've got potential players that are going to be on the board. You look at a player like Tyrese Dolan, you obviously look then at a player like obviously Michael Craig, who's potentially available for John Eustace, and you sort of have to ask yourself that question of, are they going to improve what we've got to the point where it's going to help us become a mid-table side, or potentially push for those playoffs next season? And do I believe Michael could do that given his performances this season? I think there's obviously a possibility, but you've got to then have that conversation of, he's 22 years old, he's going to want to play football. He's not going to want to play second fiddle to a 24, 25-year-old Kane Wilson, and then maybe even third fiddle to a 26, 27-year-old Ryan Nyambe. So that sort of is where the question gets to with me, where, don't get me wrong, he could be a brilliant player. He could come in and drop both of them, and it could end up with Kane Wilson being moved to be a winger to make sure Craig's playing, make sure he's playing as well. But you've got to have that conversation of, what if it isn't right? What if the right decision for him would be to stay at League One or go to a team like Pompey, go to a team like Birmingham? I personally believe Birmingham would be the wrong move for him, just based on what I anticipate them to do this summer. I think they're going to spend a lot of money, and I think they're going to sort of proper build their squad heading into a real good battle to potentially maybe even push for a double promotion back to back, obviously. So you've sort of got those conversations where I personally believe that whatever move he does make, it's got to be a move where he's going to play football at his age. And because at that 22 mark, if you're playing football already, you've got no reason to move. Now, I understand the Reading situation where he's not able to sort of have that contract put in front of him. But when it comes to making those decisions and choosing a club, are Derby County the right club for him as a right back? Probably not. Maybe in midfield, because you'll have Ibu Adams, Ben Osborne. They'll be your only options as that sort of sitting midfielder. And then obviously you've got Kenzo sitting a bit further a bit higher up, and you've got the conversation about what could happen with Cruz Allen, what could happen with Owen Eames, and obviously then the discussion around Liam Thompson, whether he gets a new contract. So there's a lot to sort of discuss in this sort of circumstance, and I, as a fan of a football club, I never want to bring in a player who we're then going to force to play because we've bought them in, when ultimately they could have gone elsewhere, played at maybe a little bit of a lower level with a little bit less expectation, and it'd be better for their career. And that's sort of the position I find myself in now when we're talking about Michael Craig. Is it the right move for him? Is it the right move for Derby? And I personally believe that this maybe isn't the right move for Derby in the sense of a right-back position. But then obviously if you're having that conversation about a defensive midfielder, I think you've certainly got to have that conversation of it's an absolutely excellent move but obviously he's played most of this season as a right-back. So it's really difficult to sort of put a sort of judge on whether this is the right move for Derby. Like this season, he made 29 appearances at right back, scoring 2 goals, a performance in midfield, and two performances in midfield, one as the holder, one a little bit further forward. And I just think you've got certain questions that are going to be asked about this player heading into a potential spell at Derby County if he was to join. And I just don't think he would ever get it. I just don't think he gets in over Kane Wilson. If Kane Wilson is going to be our right back heading into next season, there's not many players, in my opinion, who can knock him off that position. Now, obviously, I believe that there's a conversation to move Kane Wilson further forward and sort of get rid of a Caden Jackson or a Nathaniel Mendez-Lang. But I still then think that if you get an injury at right back to a Ryan Nyambe, you probably chuck in Kane Wilson at right back. Yes, you've got the conversation of Joe Ward. What's he going to do this summer? And these are all massive questions for Derby. And when it comes to a player like Michael Craig, who is, as I've mentioned like a ton of times during this video, he's 22 years old. And I understand that the Reading situation means he can't sign a new contract, but if he could get a deal to stay at Reading and Reading sort their shit out, he could be a championship player next season. I think Reading right now, what are they sat? Are they sat just outside the playoffs? Yeah, they're level on points with the playoffs heading into the final day. So there's a potential that Reading go into the playoffs and potentially go up, and he's a championship player anyway next season. And that's sort of the big discussion that would happen around Michael Craig, and that's probably why these clubs are sort of circling now, especially at Birmingham. But you look at Birmingham, you look at the players they've got, like they've got tons and tons and tons of defenders. I think they've got about 5 different right backs, and the conversation is going to be, do they really need him? Is he going to play? And for me, the important thing for a player of the age of Michael Craig is game time. Game time is the call. That's what you need. And obviously, if you then obviously make that move to a Birmingham City in the Championship, who we know are going to spend money this summer, he's probably not going to play. Whereas you go to a Pompey or a Derby, and there's probably less options ahead of him in either midfield or in that right-back position. I know there's some conversations about a couple of Pompey players being sort of potentially leaving this summer. Whether it be their call or not is a different story. So that sort of opens the door for him there as well. So you've got to sort of have that conversation, in my opinion. And I think he could be a good player for Derby, but I think it all depends on what the circumstance is, whether it be, is he coming in as a right back or is he coming in as a central midfielder? And if he's coming in as a right back, I do believe that it would not be the right move to bring him into Derby County. But you can obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Obviously, for the summer, we are going to be covering every single bit of transfer news, every single bit of speculation. We cover it all on the channel. I know some people don't like that, but the important fact is I want to make sure you're all informed and aware of everything that is going on with Derby County, whether it be on the pitch, off the pitch. That is what I intend to do on this channel. So if you have not done so already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button as well, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in my next video.